There's some drama unfolding in the world of conservative media. Conservative media commentator Steven Crowder, conservative YouTube personality, has accused Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens' Daily Wire of being in bed with big tech. So here's what happened. Steven Crowder is a YouTube conservative who was formerly affiliated with The Blaze. He's on his own now. And apparently the Daily Wire reached out to him with an offer to acquire him and to host his show going forward. Crowder hated the terms of that agreement. He said they were going to penalize him for if he ever got demonetized on YouTube or other platforms, they were going to start subtracting money from the contract. Here's Steven Crowder talking about it.
They don't get deals that...
They can be wage slaves for a little bit, come over and make a salary and grow their brand. They can be wage slaves for a little bit. They can be wage slaves for a little bit.
So Steven Crowder got on the phone with Jeremy Boring, who is Daily Wire co-creator of it with Ben Shapiro, and surreptitiously recorded him, which is pretty wild because they were very good friends previously, recorded him saying that line about what you would be if you were a young, coming up conservative, starting out, and you have to be a wage slave for a little bit. Missing in all of this was that the contract they offered Steven Crowder, $50 million over, I believe, 3 years, which is a whole lot of money. Here's Candace Owens responding to the debacle on Tim Pool's podcast.
Well, LOL to anyone who thinks that Steven Crowder is not doing this to make money. I just have to outwardly laugh. He's the person in a disguise. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? He's like, I'm here because I care about all of you. That's why I'm recording my friend and doing this crappy thing where I literally could have just said, no, I don't like those terms, and then said to everybody, I'm starting my own outfit. Fair. You walk away all the time. You have to go. I have walked away. I had an offer from The Blaze. It didn't work for me. You know what I mean? I don't need to piece apart the contract. I love those guys. I think Tyler is amazing. This is what I'm saying. People need to stop thinking that he is some knight in shining armor. He's not. He's not a knight in shining armor. And if you can't see that, watch this video because I think his acting is never more apparent. Even the titles. I didn't want to do this. Oh, really? Then why the hell did you record him?
So this is a pretty big controversy between the Daily Wire and Steven Crowder. You don't often see high-profile conservative online commentator people feuding like this. So I think it's really interesting. I want to talk about it, and I invited representatives of both sides of the argument to come on the show. Hope that happens in the future. Ameshia, what do you make of it?
The conservatives are fighting. This is hilarious. Before this, I honestly didn't know who the heck Steven Crowder was. Part of it is because that's not a group that I follow. I find this interesting because obviously everybody's in this for the money. You don't become a commentator on either side of the aisle and have these large followings without trying to stack your coins. Candace is in it for the money as well. People on the left who do it are also in it for the money. This is how this works. It's not just about spreading news and awareness. Anybody who tells you that is probably lying.
I would sit in this chair and host this show for free. I just enjoy your company so much, and Batya's company, and even Brianna's company.
And your nose is growing. At the end of the day, a $50 million contract, of course he wasn't going to mention that in his speech, because you can't create a grievance and get people to follow you in said grievance when there's $50 million plus on the other end, when the majority of Americans with families are making 60 or less. That's 60K or less. This is not a woe is me story. This is a guy who says that literally his brethren in conservative on the conservative right is in bed with or has these cushy deals with a lot of the big tech companies. Well, guess what? So does everybody. Big tech is the reason why many of us have voices in media. They carry the message on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. All of that's big tech. Without big tech and some level of communication with them, you would not have a voice. So it's interesting to me that he is using this as a demonization, but also that, to Candace's point, and I don't agree with Candace often, if you are going to have these squabbles, you could have had this with them personally. This never had to come into the public square. The recording didn't have to happen. Turn down deals. I'm sure everybody on this panel, all of us have probably turned down deals before. We didn't make a public hubbub about it. It's just not that deep.
Batya, I'm sure you would do this job for a mere $40 million, right?
Of course, of course. I think this is such an interesting story because, first of all, did he not think that the $50 million was going to, like, that the first thing the Daily Wire was going to do was sort of leak that? I mean, like, where did he think this was going? I also had this feeling watching the Candace Owens rant. Like, I had the same feeling I had when Elon Musk put out his proposal for how to end the war in Ukraine, which I thought was a really good proposal, and everybody started attacking him and trashing him, and I was just thinking, don't make me defend this guy, don't make me be on his side. And I felt that way watching this, Candace Owens video. She was absolutely right, and it was interesting to see her coming out and swinging on in support of the Daily Wire. Yes, she works there, but they had a whole kerfuffle over Kanye West. If you recall, she kept defending Kanye and defending him, even as his sort of commentary became more and more anti-Semitic until he ended up defending Nazis. And she kept saying, look, I'm not going to denounce my friend, which, fair point, but it made the Daily Wire look very bad because, Ben Shapiro was getting a lot of flack for that. So, it seems that, at that, whatever happened there, I'm sure they were happy to see her coming out, in full defense of the platform. And, it is so interesting to think about, what is it that makes Steven Crowder worth $50 million over, 3 or 4 years? Like, what is it that he's delivering that to the Daily Wire would be worth that amount of money? I mean, do you guys have sort of a sense of where he is and the value add that he brings? I mean, I understand that his following is huge and that he has a lot of young listeners, and in terms of providing that kind of young male listenership, more in the sort of Jordan Peterson model than the Andrew Tate model, if I could use that sort of dichotomy to express something, that is an active viewership, that the Daily Wire is interested in cultivating and providing content for. I mean, what do you guys see as his value add? Success
speaks for itself. He has a huge following. He has a lot of very loyal viewers. You have people, I was looking a little bit at the comments on the videos and online on Twitter. You have a lot of people defending him. A lot of people love the guy. Even I think he has the less compelling argument in this dispute, like, by far, it's not even close. But he has loyal viewers, listeners, etc. And it makes sense that the Daily Wire would want to acquire that. But the accusation he's making against the Daily Wire that that's really what's at the heart of this. That because in his deal, they would take money, deduct money from him if he gets in trouble for the things he says and is suspended or something on YouTube or elsewhere. Having that clause in the contract would be like the Daily Wire caving to big tech censorship. That's the accusation, which is a really that's a really serious charge to put on a conservative company like the Daily Wire that's always complaining about Disney and other places, doing what woke censors want.
But I would question how uncommon this actually is. And I say that just because...
Not uncommon at all.
If you become deplatformed to a certain extent, or your viewership is removed for any reason, and the entire contract was based on the viewership and what you were able to bring along with it, wouldn't that automatically mean that at some point you lose your value to them? I feel like that's
basically exactly what Jeremy Boring said in his response video. Said, look, if we're going to spend $50 million on you. If your ability, it wouldn't be us punishing you, but if YouTube punishes you and you're bringing in far less viewers and far less dollars, we couldn't continue to pay that amount. And he also said, when they started negotiations with Crowder, before they could even have a conversation, Crowder's people said, you got to send us some paper with what you're going to offer. So they put this together, and it was a little bit boilerplate. Like, they could have negotiated all these parts. If Crowder, was really worried about YouTube, maybe they could have made something different. I think they would also wanted to have a structure where the most controversial things he might say that would get him in trouble are things he would say on a different platform. It helps to mitigate
that. You're right. I think it helps to mitigate that type of crisis, because if you know that your money is going to dwindle if you say something way too crazy, then you're going to reel back to a certain extent. But to Batya's point earlier, I think that he was initially, quoted this level of money and given this within the contract because of the younger audience he brings. We have to be real. Conservatives as well as Democrats, the understanding is that your bread and butter is bringing in those younger audiences. We know that the original top three isn't doing it. ABC, NBC, NBC, CBS. We know that Fox isn't doing it. We know that, well, CNN is basically dead. We know MSN isn't doing it. It's just not happening. So in the digital space, you need those younger audiences. In the voting booths, you need those younger audiences. And it matters to have that. And they think that because he was able to propel himself and bring in those younger people, that means that he can count this type of money in contracts. But the blow up is way out of proportion because it just doesn't make sense considering what that contract actually would have brought him and the fact that it makes sense. If you get deplatformed for any reason, of course I'm not going to pay you $50 million continually. Why?
Yeah.
Right. So in publishing now, a morality clause is like de rigueur since Weinstein, sold a book for, $2 million. And then, of course, after the whole Me Too movement, they made nothing on it. So now it is very normal to have a morality clause, and they are often very amorphous. It's very hard to imagine that the Daily Wire would not have, acceded to some kind of demand to say, look, if I get deplatformed for talking about vaccines, you have to treat that differently than if I get deplatformed for raping somebody, right? Which would be a completely normal morality clause that I think a lot of people could, understand. I mean, Owens's point was that he was just using this as an opportunity to start his own thing, in this kind of backhanded way. And I will just say, almost a prayer. Let us all stop before we get to a point where we are recording a friend and then releasing that recording as some kind of marketing ploy and think we're the good guy, right?
Yeah.
Please, God, protect us all from ending up in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that really, that should erode a lot of sympathy people, even maybe his followers might have had for him, because that is just a really awful thing to do. Don't do that. In fairness to presenting, the strongest version of his argument, setting the recording aside, I think he was trying to say that the Daily Wire, in standing on principle and standing against big tech censorship, should not have a clause like that, even though that might be routine in other places. Like, they have to practice the values they're preaching, and then the Daily Wire is saying that's not. We still believe in those values. We don't want to live in a world where big tech silences people or punishes people for speaking, but that is the world we live in. So to be realistic, we'd have to have this clause, or we'd have to probably pay you a lot less money if there's the possibility that we can't monetize you anymore.
Is his recording device the one from Home Alone?
Yes. Yeah, I think that was a shout out to Home Alone. Anyway, it's an interesting dispute because these kinds of disputes don't often spill out into the public much. And I did find the response from Jeremy Boring, Matt Walsh, Candace Owens pretty compelling. But I think Crowder is going to be making his case again on Tim Pool's show maybe later today. So we'll be watching out for that. Maybe we'll discuss it tomorrow. Tomorrow on Rising, The Intercept's Jimmy Tobias will join us to discuss his reporting on unredacted NIH emails showing efforts to rule out the lab origin of COVID. Batya, it's been a pleasure to see you. Ameshia, it's been great to have you with us as well. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that you can consume podcasts. And we're also on Roku. We're on other streaming services. We're everywhere. So catch us wherever fits you best. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.